Give away too much about the future, but New Zealand wins the America's Cup. I'll leave that with you guys if you want to go get your bets in now while you can.
Wonderful. Well, no, it's great. It's great to get an insight as to what's going to hit us in a couple of hours. It's good. It's good. I know I'm slightly biased because I'm all the way in the UK, so that's my perspective on it. Right. Corporate security modernization, big topic. But it doesn't have to mean technology. Could mean processes. And we're going to go through a few questions. Why don't I start with you, Rachel, and I'll work my way around. Rachel, corporate security modernization, what are we talking about anyway? What does it actually mean?
That is a really, really good question, Callum. It's such a broad topic, and you're quite right. It really does encompass everything from technology to policy, process, and procedure. I think in the terms of modernisation and what that really, really means and what it's going to look like is encompassing security across all elements of the business, and really reaching into all facets of business operations in future. Now, that has long been the epitome of what it should look like and the standard that we've all been trying to achieve for many, many, many years. And some businesses will certainly do that better than others, but I don't think I've actually come across anyone that does it to the degree that they are comfortable with, where they can say, yes, we have actually achieved this. So I think with the fallout from Corona, we can see that the security function is going to have a lot more presence and will hopefully be a little bit more far-reaching throughout different areas of a business operation, and we can hopefully start to achieve that in future.
I like that, and more presence, more prevalence. And for those of you who came to our January Executive Security Forum, we had Mark Oxenham, and of course Mark Richards was also there. We were talking a lot about how the security function got everything dumped on them. Everything became your business, which I guess is good. Stephen, what do you see as this modernization piece? What is modernization of the corporate security function? I think you're on mute, Stephen.
It's better. Okay. Look. From our point of view, I think from a modernisation point of view, the focus for us is really about the effective integration of so many different forms of technology that are out there and how that plays its role within the broader security regime that's out there. I think all of our clients are always looking for innovation, and they see lots of products out there, but it's what's appropriate for the level of risk and how do we work across all of the aspects of a security regime rather than just that very siloed approach that the local security market has become over years of guarding is provided by these people, cameras are provided by these people. It's really it's really become really prevalent in our industry over the last years. And I think, with cost being a huge concern with year on year, there's a big opportunity now to look at how do we leverage all of those opportunities out there to get a better outcome with the available technology that's in the market.
Okay, well, I like that because you're looking at the technology and perhaps services that you could bundle because of the new technology, which suddenly enables this modernization. But Peter, what about you? What if modernization was not about technology? What if it was in fact about customer experience and adding value? Is that another way to look at modernization? Peter?
Great question. I mean, yep. I looked at this and thought very much like Rachel and Stephen. This is about user experience, whether that's the customer or our own internal staff. I think integration, cyber, BCM, safety, all those areas, they're all converging. They still have their differences, but they're converging. And I also see the way in which we are moving out of the office. And not just because of COVID, that will end, but post-COVID, that flexibility will remain for a number of organisations. So we have to protect security and safety and BCM, security being cyber and physical, at home or in a near home situation, not the simple contained office. An expression we use in our organisation, we have about 100,000 staff and we have about 1,000 off premises. So we talk about the fact that we will be managing security not in 1,000 premises, but in 100,000 premises. And that's our shift in mindset.
I like that, and you sort of allude to this conundrum of working from home, and I think we'll get on to whether or not we want threat intelligence feeds for 100,000 homes or maybe geographies. But anyway, we'll get on to that. Mark, obviously you're coming at the modernization piece from an executive security standpoint. If COVID has done anything, has it not shown where executive security fits more in the modernized corporate security world? What does corporate security modernization mean for you, Mark?
Thanks, Philip. Looking at people's comments where we talk about technology and process, we've got Ivor on the line here, and he talks about the 4 pillars of security and making sure all of those align with each other to support each other. And I think that definitely highlighted when COVID first hit. Some people looked and turned to technology, to better place themselves when it comes to safety around the work and entry and the safety of the executives. But I think it's important for me to look at the processes that we have in place, the processes I have around my executives. Modernization, taking what we traditionally do and improve on it. And by using our current technology, how do we maximize the value of that technology? And I think a lot of different work groups, BCM, we're working a lot closer together when it came to our response. And we started learning, well, there's a lot that our business continuity team can teach us that we can now use their processes in our security plans and our security responses. And we're breaking down those silos. And, then you had the whole aspect of everyone working from home. Well, now you have your execs, you've designed this head office to protect them, to keep them safe, and these processes here. Well, now they're working from home. They're now living a very routine life. They're not traveling. When the country goes into lockdown for 4 weeks, anyone with criminal intent knows that your exec is at home for those 4 weeks. They're either going to be out going for a walk around the block, going to the shop, or inside their home. So that adds other aspects to our risks that we look at for our executives.
And you paint a very important picture, because hostile terminations or people with a grudge, people are suddenly in a more accessible area, arguably. What about you, Rachell? If we think about what this working from home environment has created in terms of potential threats and what it's done to your work, obviously there is a school of thought that says people will return to offices, but maybe in a hybrid format, or let's say they never return to offices. Either way, we're going to have to address this. What's it done to the threat landscape, Rachell?
I think it's done obviously quite a lot to the threat landscape, and things have changed considerably. I mean, we just heard from Jacqueline with an increase to the insider threat being malicious or non-malicious, regardless, it is still taking place. Security of data is more critical now than it ever has been before, and we're seeing and hearing in our news reports a lot more about attacks that are taking place and vulnerabilities being exploited just because people aren't within their normal operating environment, and they're perhaps responding to things because they think, oh, it must be legit. They're out of their comfort zone, so to speak, which is really introducing new vulnerabilities. I've spoken to colleagues who have their children working, studying from home, taking a picture of mum or dad at work. What's in the background on mum or dad's screen? All of a sudden, that's on a Zoom school lessons plan. You don't know what information they could be accessing. What happens if you're doing a confidential staff evaluation and you've got your partner sitting there? and you're discussing an employee's performance, and that's also a confidential discussion that shouldn't be happening with others in the room, and in the workplace it wouldn't be, but all of a sudden we have to develop these workarounds to accommodate these types of things. So I think it's created a whole bunch of risks that weren't foreseen previously. That's just around data and information security, but also it introduces the issue of the perimeter and where does the duty of care stop? You can't stop people from who they bring into their home. I mean, COVID, in theory, we have restrictions on what we can and can't do, but people will breach those rules whether we like it or not. You can't control what a person does in their own home to the degree that you can in the workplace. So it introduces privacy laws, what control you do have, and when you're talking about executives and the security of those personnel, where does your duty of care end? And what can you realistically expect to have line of sight and control over?
I like that, and that duty of care and you know, threat intel. It's kind of interesting. If I draw parallels, because we've got people in the audience from the managed service provider community, a lot of them are trying to bundle threat intel tools or cyber threat intelligence tools, but those tools are suddenly changing their marketing campaigns to say, you know, we're actually really good at monitoring employee attendance and performance. And, you know, we're turning things that are designed to protect against nation state actors, and we're turning them into things that we hadn't imagined. But you also mentioned perimeter, Rachell. Let me go to Stephen. This perimeter question is quite interesting. Where is the perimeter now that we're protecting?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. It's not an easy one to answer either. It's you know, when we talk about, you know, our own people, our internal, you know, management team who are all working from home in those kind of environments, obviously that dynamic has changed. I think in our world, what we've seen is that as a provider of, you know, lots of security officers and those kind of things in that type of environment, we're often now seeing our people are still on site, but they're now looking after empty premises with our customers' employees who are now spread out among their workforce. So that risk dynamic that we're managing is a little bit changing as well. So it's a difficult question. It's a difficult one to manage. It's not one I've got a simple answer for.
I know. It's a bit of an ethereal question. In fact, I used to run an event called Edge of Network Security Forum, not for cyber, but for physical specialists, where we were actually saying, is there an edge? Where is the edge? Well, it's definitely somewhere else. I think we can maybe agree right now. Peter, looking at this perimeter question, is there an appetite to get threat intel from everybody's home? Is that the way forward, or should we be talking about threat intel feeds for geographies? What are your thoughts on the new perimeter we're protecting?
Okay, well, look, first, I think that it's something, whilst it's something that seems like a fantastic idea and we all want to aim for it, we have to balance some of these against existing or other regulations and laws that are out there. So the duty of care under, say, a health and safety law, that's a law. But then privacy laws about do people have to disclose their address or emergency telephone number? That's a different privacy law. And we're finding that in some countries more so than others, these can be at odds and against each other. And I think that we are all testing and learning our way through this as to exactly what we can do to under our duty of care and to protect our colleagues, balanced against their privacy and their right to be left alone in their own house.
I like it, and I think on that privacy and perimeter question, Mark has just made a comment. He says there is no network perimeter. So if there's no network perimeter, maybe there's no physical perimeter either. Mark, what about for you? Because obviously you're used to traveling with executives around the world and you know, ensuring that they are secure. Are we seeing maybe a democratization of executive security? Now everyone's an executive. they're all at home, they're all equal, and we have to protect them equally. Or am I getting that all wrong?
No, you're right on the money. And people, no matter what organization you work for, people always come first. And I think everyone I've worked for, whether it's government agencies or private corporations, that's always been the number one rule is people safety always comes first, no matter where they sit in the organizational chart. Going back to Peter, his comment on testing and learning, we're in the same boat. This is new waters for everyone. It's new waters for the executives. They're used to traveling. They're used to a different sort of work environment themselves. So they're also learning as we're changing and learning. And we've been working quite closely with our health and safety teams. They specialize in a lot of legislation and law around privacy and what's expected when it comes to the health and safety of a large group of people within the work force compared to myself, where I concentrate on 12 or 15 executives. It's very different to looking after 2,000 or 3,000 people. And I think coming back to that whole comment of breaking down silos, using those specialists outside of your work group or security team and looking at how they're doing things, and also attending little conferences like this where, hey, what are they doing in Australia? What are they doing in Singapore or Taiwan, where they've handled COVID differently to how we've done it? And what are they using technology-wise and process-wise to continue moving forward with their work group?
Yeah, and I love that cross-pollination, and I'm really grateful to Gav Snyder and the ISRM and Risk to Solution crew, because that cross-pollination means that there is no perimeter to our discussion, is there? I'm here, you're there, you're in Australia. It's all to play for. But Rachel, I feel we must investigate the privacy considerations a little bit more. Of all of this modernization, if everybody's an executive, you're an executive, everybody's an executive now. Can we extrapolate the privacy concerns that we're going to be facing when we're trying to secure them?
That's a really big question. There's certainly a lot that can be done in terms of monitoring access to data, what is being viewed, what is being shared. There are electronic controls where how much time you spend on certain websites, monitoring, answering emails, responding to colleagues, etc., is all monitored, and metrics are evaluated, etc. But whether or not you should do that is another issue. Just because you have that availability to monitor your staff to that degree, I think we're going to see a lot of pushback from personnel who find it, frankly, quite creepy. However, there will also be that benefit and that payoff from things that you uncover that you weren't expecting. You're able to respond a lot more quickly. I think what needs to be done, if anyone were to go down that path, would be to really write it into employee contracts so that people are aware of it. And I just don't think that we're there yet with that level and degree of monitoring that is available for privacy. There was a point raised before about sharing of home address information and emergency contact information. That, to me, is something that, again, we haven't had to do that yet, or certainly not in Australia anyway. My colleagues don't know where I live, I don't know where they live, and I'm quite happy with that arrangement. But if things were to go to the path where we did have that degree of knowledge about our own situations, then again it would need to be introduced slowly. It would be a full change management piece because it would undo some of the privacy considerations that we have in place currently. So it's quite a large piece. There are a lot of things that can be done, but everything, as with anything, any sort of security control, there's always going to be a trade-off.
No, I hadn't actually considered that. I think that's that is a bit of a pickle because you want to protect them, so you need to know where they are. If they were in Singapore on a business trip, you would know where they are, so you can look after them. But if they're sat at home, it's a tricky one. All right. Well, Rachel, you also mentioned vast amounts of data as well. So privacy issues aside, Stephen, how can we get all of that information and make it actionable? How can we, become proactive as corporate security professionals?
Look, I think there's a whole whole range of ways we can sift through. Like you say, there's a vast amount of data. There's a lot that we can collect, and there's, as Rachel highlighted, there's lots of different systems and platforms to do that. I think it's really being able to define what it is that's important to you, that you want to collect and be able to analyze and use in that context. Our whole business these days is around in collection of big data and how we utilize that to drive improvement or drive service delivery or drive customer experience and those kind of things. So it's about, I think, really being able to define what that looks like and what it is that you want to do, that you want to be able to analyze most, and really focusing on that framework.
But Stephen, I'm sure everyone on the panel gets somebody knocking on the door every day saying, please, can you either buy or bundle and sell to your customers, my wonderful threat intel solution. Whether you're a service provider or an end user, you probably get people knocking on the door. And yet we still have people getting stuff like, I'm going to Egypt, so I'm getting a complete threat intel brief about the pyramids and about ancient Egypt. There's that versus I see there is a protest where you are because I am linked in with you. What would your message be to perhaps the SaaS or service providers out there trying to provide a service for this?
Yeah, look, that's a great question. I think there's always something out there that we can gather that data around. But I mean, I think if I look at from our point of view, our focus will always be what is the data and intelligence that our clients need most? What's important to them, and why are they engaging with us, and why do they choose to outsource the services to somebody like us, and what expertise and what value do we provide that they can't do internally themselves? And so for every one of my clients, that looks very different. They're going to want different information. They want different data to analyze. They're going to want to manage their business risk in a very different way. So I don't know that there's a one size fits all to that. It's really about really understanding, again, what's critical to them and what do they want to capture and be able to analyze, and what do they want to have access to make good decisions.
I like that. Well then let's sort of lead with a final thought on that good decision making. Peter, travel risk management, it's a crucial piece of this corporate security modernization. How are we going to see it evolve, given that everybody has individual needs all the time? Surely there's some sort of technology piece in there, but tell us about your vision for travel risk management.
Well, I tell you what, I'm not sure if I call it my vision, but gee, it's been easy in 2020 to manage travel risk. when there has been nobody traveling anywhere. It's never been so simple. But that will obviously change with the rollout of vaccines, vaccination passports. So vaccines will be key to travel. So when people talk about, will our staff want to get vaccines? I just ask, well, it depends if they ever want to go on holidays overseas again. Where is this landscape going? With the way in which we can just track in the background with apps and things on smartphones, with simple one-button presses to emergency helplines all over the world, the technology has made it so much easier and less intrusive. I actually just put a comment in the chat before talking about the privacy and the risk that we're balancing. I'm very concerned about either our executives or our travelers in a place like Singapore or Sydney. I'm very concerned when they are in Pakistan, Sierra Leone, Iraq, South Africa. So in those higher risk situations for travelers or people who live there or expats, there is a greater deal of monitoring, and there's an expectation because of the risk that there will be greater monitoring. And in fact, many people want to be monitored when they are in a higher risk travel area. So the way in which automation, systems and technology can assist with that is wonderful.
Well, that is a vision. It should hopefully be wonderful. And you're right. The passport for vaccines is an interesting question. Obviously, breaking in the news, some countries are going to block people with COVID passports of one variety and accept people with a COVID passport of another variety. That's a weird dynamic. You know, COVID snobbery. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. Mark, obviously, this what is your bread and butter in some respects. What's your vision? I'll give you a vision as well. What's your vision for travel risk management? And I think that would be a good way to sum up this corporate security modernization panel.
The landscape obviously is going to be very different, to the point where you'll have a global map of where your vaccination passport will get you. There will be countries obviously that are not trusted because of internal fraud and the purchase of fake vaccination certificates. So this may impact on, let's say, executives that want to travel to places like Africa or Middle East. Obviously, there's a lot of business there, and there was a lot of increase in travel for executives to these places. Well, COVID's going to put a big dent in the future of that travel. Between other countries such as Australia, New Zealand, US, and there'll be some sort of agreement that stabilizes between what's acceptable, and then it'll just be a case of when you come down to planning these trips, making sure, hey, have you got all your paperwork? Has everything been signed off? Because the last thing you want to do is arrive in a country where there's a stopover and you can't board your flight for your final destination because you haven't ticked a box. So obviously there's going to be a lot more planning. We'll be working closely with supporters such as your international SOS and looking at what standards of travel they send out for insurance purposes, etc. Because some costs of recovery from COVID, as we've seen in the US, where people are getting a bill for $1 million from a private hospital, you're going to have to put that into your plan. You don't want to be stuck somewhere in a foreign country where you can't move for 4 weeks or 5 weeks because your VIP's just picked up COVID. So it's changing everything. It's going to change how we look at the world, how we travel. But I'm pretty sure sooner than later, executives want to get traveling again. They've been hunkered down for a long time.
Yeah, not just executives. But no, this is great. We could go on, but we are out of time. I love this piece, and I love the modernization of corporate security as a topic in the context of the third party and the possibility of working with an MSS, be that a physical MSS or a cyber MSS. I think it's all to play for. Rachell, Peter, Mark, and Stephen, thank you very much. Please give them a wonderful virtual round of applause, and I look forward to seeing you in the audience.
Thanks, William. Thanks again for organising.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Right. Let's just make sure everything is as it should be.